This is SOSF. Okay, people, buckle up. Today, we're going to talk about something that is so massive, so powerful, and so deeply embedded in the technology that you use every single second of every single day, that it's practically invisible. And that's the crazy part. It's a ghost in the machine. I want you to look at a company called Broadcom. Most of you have probably never heard of it. It's not like Apple or Google or Tesla, where you see the products, you touch them. You don't buy anything from Broadcom at the store. But I guarantee you, this company's technology is inside your phone. It's inside the data centers that stream this podcast to you. It's running the checkout scanner at the grocery store. It's managing the global banking system. It is everywhere. And the story of this company is wild. It's not a story about some kid in a hoodie in a garage coming up with a brilliant new app. No. This is a story about cold, hard, brutal business strategy. It's about a CEO, a guy named Hock Tan, who is playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers. He's a straight-up killer in the business world, and what he's built is a monster. A two-headed monster, really. One head is at the absolute bleeding edge of the AI revolution, the thing that everyone is freaking out about. The other head is in the deep, dark, boring corners of corporate software that just prints money, an insane amount of money. So today we're going to peel back the layers on this thing. We're going to talk about how one company can be the secret weapon for Google and Meta in their war against NVIDIA, and at the same time, be the company that runs the software on those ancient-looking mainframe computers you thought died out with the dinosaurs. It's a wild combination, man. It's like finding out the guy who designs Formula One engines also owns all the toll roads. It doesn't seem to make sense, but when you look at the strategy, it's nothing short of genius. Let's start with the guy running the whole show, this Hock Tan fella. To understand Broadcom, you gotta understand his philosophy, because he's the architect of this whole empire. The guy is in his 70s, and he's built this thing through a series of massive, hostile, and brilliant acquisitions. His playbook, which people in the finance world call the Hock Tan Doctrine, is something else. Imagine you're a private equity firm. Those are the guys you hear about who do leveraged buyouts. They borrow a metric ton of money, buy a company that's maybe a little sleepy, a little inefficient, and they go in there like a SEAL team. They strip it down to the studs. They fire people. They sell off the parts of the business that aren't making crazy profits, and they focus only on the absolute core of what makes money. They squeeze it like an orange until every last drop of cash comes out. It's brutal, but it's effective. Now, imagine that, but for a technology company. That's what Hock Tan does. He looks for companies that are absolute leaders in their little niche. They have to be mission critical. That means their customers, huge corporations, cannot operate without their product. They're totally locked in. These companies might be seen as mature, maybe a little past their prime. The stock market might think they're boring. Hock Tan sees a gold mine. He goes in, buys them up, and applies his playbook. He takes their product list, which might have hundreds of items, and he cuts it down to just the most profitable ones. He looks at their customer list and basically ignores the small guys. He focuses laser-like on the biggest 2,000 companies in the world, the Global 2,000, because that's where the big, juicy, recurring contracts are. Then, he jacks up the prices and changes the licensing models to maximize recurring revenue. It's not about synergy. It's not this corporate BS you hear about where we'll cross-sell our products and create this beautiful ecosystem. No. He buys a company, treats it like an independent fiefdom, and just optimizes it for cash flow. Pure and simple. The cash that pours out is then used to do two things: pay down the massive debt he took on to buy the company in the first place, and then get ready for the next kill. He did this with CA Technologies, a company that makes software for those giant mainframe computers. You know, the big iron boxes that still run the world's biggest banks and airlines. Nobody thinks that's a sexy business. But it's incredibly sticky. A bank isn't just going to switch out its mainframe software. It would be like trying to change the foundation of a skyscraper while it's still standing. So, Hock Tan bought it for almost $19 billion. He did the same thing with Symantec's enterprise security business, another brand that's been around forever, deeply embedded in big corporations. He paid over $10 billion for that. He just buys these cash-generating fortresses. This whole strategy is the engine of Broadcom. So when you're looking at this company, you're not just betting on a chip or a piece of software. You're betting on one man's relentless, proven, and ruthless system for extracting value. It's a financial engineering marvel disguised as a tech company. So, that's the philosophy. Now let's look at the first head of the monster, the semiconductor business. This is the sexy part of the story. This is the part that's plugged directly into the AI gold rush. You hear about AI, and the first name that comes to mind is NVIDIA, right? They make these GPUs, these graphics processing units, that are the absolute workhorses for training these large language models like ChatGPT. Nvidia has been on one of the most insane runs in stock market history because they have a virtual monopoly on these things. They've got this whole ecosystem called CUDA that locks developers in. They're the king. But here's the thing. If you're Google, or you're Meta, or you're Amazon, are you comfortable with one company having that much power over you? Are you comfortable with your entire future being dependent on the price and availability of chips from a single supplier? Hell no. It's a massive strategic risk. So, what do? You decide to build your own. It's called compute self-sufficiency. These giants are pouring billions and billions of dollars into designing their own custom chips, their own AI accelerators. Google has their TPUs, their tensor processing units. Meta has their own custom silicon. They're designing these chips to be perfectly optimized for their specific needs, whether it's running their search algorithm or serving up videos on your feed. They want something that's faster, more power efficient, and, critically, cheaper for them in the long run. They want to break free from Nvidia's shackles. Now, designing a chip like this is one of the most complex engineering feats on the planet. You can't just do it in-house. You need a partner. And who is the #1, undisputed king of designing this kind of custom silicon, these ASICs, as they're called? It's Broadcom. Broadcom is the primary enabler of this entire anti-Nvidia movement. They are the secret weapon for the hyperscalers. When Google wants to build a new TPU, they go to Broadcom. When Meta builds its new AI chip, they work with Broadcom. So every single dollar that Google decides not to spend on an Nvidia GPU, a huge chunk of that money flows directly into the Broadcom ecosystem. They are the ultimate picks and shovels provider in this AI gold rush. It doesn't matter who wins the war in the long run, because they're selling weapons to one of the most powerful sides, and the numbers are just staggering. Their AI-related revenue is exploding. We're talking about growth of over 200% year over year. The CEO is talking about a path to $100 billion in annual AI revenue by 2030. That's not a typo. 100 billions. It's just a mind-boggling amount of money. Just recently, they announced a massive partnership with OpenAI, the company that created ChatGPT. They're going to co-develop custom AI accelerators for them. This is the company at the absolute bleeding edge of the AI frontier, and they chose Broadcom as their silicon partner. That is the ultimate stamp of approval. But making the chip, the brain, is only half the battle. This is something most people don't get about AI infrastructure. It's a networking problem. Think about it like this. An AI data center isn't just one big computer. It's a cluster of tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of these little processors all working together on a single problem. Now, imagine you have an army of 100,000 geniuses. If they can't talk to each other instantly and efficiently, their collective intelligence is useless. You just have a room full of smart people yelling. The network is how they talk to each other. The network is the nervous system of the AI. If the network is slow or has bottlenecks, it doesn't matter how fast your chips are. The chips will just be sitting there, waiting for data. The network becomes the bottleneck. And as these AI models get bigger and bigger, the networking challenge becomes astronomical. This is where the other part of Broadcom's AI dominance comes in. They are the undisputed kings of high-speed networking hardware, specifically for something called Ethernet. Their Tomahawk family of switch silicon is the industry standard. A switch is basically a traffic cop for data. It directs the insane fire hose of information between all these thousands of processors, making sure everything gets where it needs to go with the lowest possible delay, or latency. They just came out with a new chip, the Tomahawk 6, that can handle over 100 terabits per second. That number is so large it's almost meaningless. It's like downloading thousands of high-definition movies every single second. That's the kind of performance you need to connect these gigascale AI factories. And this brings us to the great holy war happening in AI infrastructure right now. Ethernet versus InfiniBand. This sounds nerdy, but stick with me, because it's a battle for the soul of the internet. Broadcom champions Ethernet. Ethernet is an open standard. That means anyone can build products for it. It's like the USB standard. You can buy a USB cable from 100 different companies, and it will work with your computer. This fosters competition, drives down prices, and prevents any one company from having a stranglehold on the market. The hyperscalers, Google, Meta, Amazon, love this. They want to be able to mix and match the best gear from different vendors. They don't want to be locked into a single company's ecosystem. On the other side, you have Nvidia. Nvidia champions its own proprietary networking technology called InfiniBand, and a new version they call Spectrum X. Their argument is that because they design everything, the GPU, the networking card, the switch, the software, it all works together perfectly. It's a vertically integrated, closed system. It's the Apple approach. Their argument is that this end-to-end design gives you better performance, lower latency, and is just better for the most demanding AI training jobs. So you have this massive philosophical and technical battle. Broadcom and a coalition of other tech giants have formed something called the Ultra Ethernet Consortium, UEC, to push the open standard forward and prove that Ethernet can be just as good as, if not better than, NVIDIA's proprietary stuff. Broadcom is leading the charge for the open team. Every time a hyperscaler chooses to build their AI data center using Ethernet, it's a massive win for Broadcom. The OpenAI deal was a huge validation for this approach, because it showed that even for the most cutting-edge applications, an open, Ethernet-based network is the way to go. So that's the first head of the beast. They're making the custom brains for the giants who want to escape NVIDIA's shadow, and they're making the nervous system that connects everything together. They are absolutely essential to the AI build-out. But while all this high-tech, futuristic stuff is going on, the other head of the monster is quietly conquering a different world. This brings us to the infrastructure software business. For years, Hock Tan looked at his semiconductor business, which can be very cyclical. It has big booms and big busts, and he wanted something more stable, something with predictable, recurring revenue. A rock-solid foundation that would just churn out cash, quarter after quarter, no matter what. So he went shopping. And this is where he made his most audacious move yet. In 2023, he bought a company called VMware for $69 billion. I have to pause here. $69 billion. It's a number that just breaks your brain. It's more than the GDP of a lot of countries. And he did it for a software company that a lot of people in the tech world thought was kind of over. So what does VMware even do? In the simplest terms, they invented the modern private cloud. Before the cloud was a thing, if a big company needed a new application, they'd have to go out and buy a new physical server, a big metal box, install the operating system, and manage the whole thing. It was expensive and slow. VMware came along with this magic trick called virtualization. Their software lets you take one giant, powerful physical server and slice it up into dozens of smaller virtual machines or VMs. Each VM acts like its own independent computer, but it's really just a piece of software running on the same hardware. This was a revolution. It meant companies could run way more applications on way less hardware, saving them a fortune in money and space. This technology is the foundation of almost every corporate data center in the world, and it was a key building block for the public cloud, like Amazon Web Services. But over time, the world started shifting to the public cloud. Companies started renting computing power from Amazon, Microsoft, and Google instead of building their own data centers. So VMware, the king of the private data center, started to look like a legacy player. Hock Tan saw it differently. He saw a company with its software installed in virtually every major corporation on the planet. He saw a massive, entrenched customer base that was deeply, deeply locked in. And he saw an opportunity to apply his playbook on the grandest scale yet. The moment the deal closed, he moved with a speed and ferocity that stunned the entire tech industry. First, he streamlined the product line. VMware had this huge, confusing catalog of hundreds of different products. Hock Tan cut it down to one core offering, VMware Cloud Foundation, or VCF. This is an all-in-one package to build and run your own private cloud. Then, he sold off the parts he didn't want, like their desktop computing and security divisions. But the most controversial move was what he did to the business model. He terminated every single perpetual license that VMware had ever sold. A perpetual license is where you buy the software once and you own it forever. He killed all of that. He moved every single customer to a subscription model. And he didn't just change the model, he changed how they priced it. It was no longer based on the amount of virtual memory you used. It was now based on the number of physical CPU cores in your servers. For many customers, this resulted in a massive, immediate price hike. The entire ecosystem of partners and resellers was thrown into chaos. People were screaming. They were furious. They felt like they were being held hostage. Pundits were predicting a mass exodus of customers who would flee to competitors like Microsoft's Hyper-V or another company called Nutanix. But Hock Tan was making a calculated bet. He was betting that for his most important customers, the Global 2000, the cost and complexity of ripping out VMware and replacing it with something else would be so high, so painful, that they would have no choice but to pay up. He was betting that the lock-in was real. And so far, it looks like his bet is paying off. The vast majority of his biggest customers have signed on to the new subscription model. His long-term vision here is actually pretty smart. He's betting on a trend called cloud repatriation. For the last decade, the mantra was cloud first. Everybody was rushing to move their stuff to the public cloud. But now, some companies are getting what you might call cloud bill shock. They're realizing that for certain predictable workloads, renting computing power from Amazon can get incredibly expensive and unpredictable. There are also concerns about data security and sovereignty. So, a counter-trend is emerging where companies are moving some of their applications back from the public cloud to their own private data centers, or to a hybrid model. Hock Tan is positioning the new, streamlined VMware Cloud Foundation as the perfect on-ramp for this repatriation. He's selling it as an on-premise equivalent to the public cloud. You get the same cloud-like experience, but with the control, security, and predictable costs of running it yourself. If that repatriation trend really takes off, Broadcom is perfectly positioned to capture billions. So you have these two heads of the monster. The semiconductor head is riding the AI wave, powering the next generation of the internet. And the software head is a fortress, a high-margin toll road for the world's biggest companies, just churning out predictable, recurring cash. And man, does it churn out cash. Let's talk about the money, because the numbers are just hard to comprehend. This company is a financial machine. Their profit margins are insane, way higher than most of their competitors. We're talking about adjusted EBITDA margins of over 60%. For a company of this size, that is just unheard of. This profitability translates into what finance guys call free cash flow. That's the real cash that's left over after you've paid for everything you need to run and grow the business. It's the money you can use to pay dividends, buy back stock, or acquire another company. Broadcom generates a biblical flood of free cash flow. We're talking close to $20 billion a year. It's an absolute geyser of money. This cash flow is the fuel for Hock Tan's entire strategy. When he buys a company like VMware, he takes on a ton of debt, like over $60 billion in debt. Wall Street sometimes gets nervous about that. But he's proven, time and time again, that he can use this massive cash flow to pay down that debt with incredible speed. It's a core part of the playbook. Leverage up, buy, optimize for cash, and then rapidly deleverage. And with the money that's left over, he gives a huge chunk of it back to shareholders. They have a dividend policy that is just relentless. They've increased their dividend for 13 years in a row, even after making these gigantic, debt-fueled acquisitions. It's a signal of supreme confidence from management that the cash will continue to flow, no matter what. So, you look at all this, and it seems like an unstoppable machine. A brilliant, ruthless CEO with a flawless playbook, a dominant position in the AI boom, a software business that's a cash-printing fortress. It seems too good to be true. So, what's the catch? What could possibly go wrong? Well, there are some real risks. Big ones. The first is that whole VMware strategy. It's a high-wire act. While it looks like it's working so far, there's a chance he might have pushed his customers too far. The anger and resentment over the licensing changes are real. It has opened the door for competitors like Nutanix and Microsoft to go after that customer base. If even a small percentage of those big customers decide that enough is enough and go through the pain of migrating away from VMware, it could seriously hurt the financial logic of that $69 billion deal. Then there's the competition in the AI space. Yes, they are the key partner for the hyperscalers building their own chips, but they're not the only one. A company called Marvell is emerging as a serious challenger in the custom silicon market, and they are fighting tooth and nail for the same handful of customers. And in networking, you can never, ever count out NVIDIA. Their vertically integrated approach is incredibly compelling, and they are a marketing and engineering juggernaut. This is a war fought by giants, and nothing is guaranteed. There's also customer concentration risk. A huge chunk of their wireless business, the chips in your smartphone, comes from Apple. We've seen what happens to companies that are too dependent on Apple. Apple is a notoriously tough negotiator, and they are constantly working to design their own chips and cut out suppliers. If Apple ever manages to replace Broadcom's chips with their own in-house design, it would be a massive blow. Same thing in the AI business. Their revenue is concentrated among a tiny handful of hyperscale customers. Losing even one of those would be a disaster. And then there's the geopolitical stuff. The semiconductor industry is ground zero for the tensions between the US and other world powers. Export controls, tariffs, supply chain disruptions. Broadcom is exposed to all of it. A major escalation in trade wars could throw a giant wrench in their operations. But maybe the biggest risk of all is what's called key person risk. The entire investment thesis for Broadcom is built on the genius of one man, Hock Tan. His unique vision and his relentless execution are what made the company what it is. He's in his 70s. What happens when he retires? Who can possibly step into those shoes? Can anyone else run his playbook with the same discipline and success? A change in leadership could fundamentally change the entire company. The day he announces his retirement, you're going to see a lot of nervous investors. So, where does that leave us? You look at Broadcom, and you see this incredibly complex, fascinating, and powerful entity. It's not a simple story. It's not just a growth company or a value company. It's both. It's a hybrid beast that has one foot planted firmly in the hypergrowth future of artificial intelligence, and the other foot planted in the stable, cash-gushing present of enterprise software. It's a bet on a very specific and brutal form of capitalism, one that prioritizes financial efficiency above all else. But you can't deny the results. It has created one of the most powerful and profitable technology companies on the planet, all while hiding in plain sight. It's a company that has strategically positioned itself as the indispensable partner to the biggest players in tech, enabling them to wage their wars while it profits from all sides. They're not just in the game, they're the infrastructure on which the game is played. It forces you to think about where the real power in the tech world lies. Is it with the companies whose names we all know, who make the shiny gadgets and the cool apps? Or is it with the silent, unseen titans like Broadcom, who build the fundamental plumbing of our entire digital world? And that kind of leaves you wondering, doesn't it? Which brings me to a final question for you to chew on. Given that a company like this can become so powerful and essential by acquiring critical technologies and then maximizing their price and control over them, what does that mean for the future of innovation? If the end game for any successful, mission-critical technology is to be bought by a financial optimizer like Broadcom, does that ultimately help or hinder the creation of the next big thing? See you next time.